After 15 years at Dalton & Brooks Financial, I had stopped counting the number of early mornings and late nights. I poured everything into this company. Mentoring, overtime, fixing other people's mistakes, staying loyal even when budgets tightened. Yet, as I sat in the sleek, glass-walled conference room on a chilly Friday morning, none of that seemed to matter. Across the table sat Amanda Price, the freshly appointed CEO, barely in her mid-30s, flanked by Richard, the ever-aloof HR manager, and Kevin, my direct supervisor, whose smirk betrayed a level of satisfaction that turned my stomach. Amanda's voice was calm but detached, almost rehearsed. "Kathy, thank you for joining us. I'll get straight to the point. As part of our strategic shift, we're restructuring. Unfortunately, your position has been deemed redundant." Redundant. The word echoed in my head like a slap. I knew this company inside and out, from the legacy accounting systems to the quirks of our biggest clients. But I remained composed, folding my hands neatly in my lap. I had learned long ago that showing emotion in these rooms was a losing game. Before I could even respond, Kevin leaned back, crossing his arms. "We're just cleaning house, Kathy. Trimming the dead weight, if you will." Richard flinched but said nothing. Amanda didn't even blink. From the corner of the room, Emma, one of the younger analysts, who'd only been with us for 2 years, chimed in softly. "Don't take it personally, Kathy. It's just business." Her voice was awkward, almost apologetic, but the words still stung. I smiled politely, my heart pounding beneath my carefully pressed blazer. "No problem at all," I replied calmly, watching their eyes flicker with surprise. They had expected resistance, maybe even tears, but what they didn't know was that I had been expecting this moment for weeks. 3 weeks ago, I stumbled upon an internal email chain that I was never meant to see. A forwarded thread, carelessly copied to me after hours, detailed Amanda and Kevin's plan to modernize the company by eliminating senior staff under the guise of restructuring. Me included. I had spent the night since then preparing, quietly, strategically. Amanda slid a manila folder toward me. "Inside you'll find the severance terms. We'll need your keycard, laptop and phone by end of day. Your team will be informed this afternoon." My team. 12 talented people who I had personally hired and mentored. They were like family to me. Many of them still leaned on me for professional and even personal advice. The thought of leaving them behind hurt more than the thought of losing my title. "I understand completely," I said, lifting the folder but not opening it. "Thank you for the opportunity." Amanda gave a relieved nod, already shifting her attention to the next item on the agenda. Kevin's smug grin widened and Richard scribbled mechanically in his HR notebook. Only Emma, who avoided my gaze, seemed to register that something wasn't sitting right. As I walked back to my office, I passed by the main conference room where Amanda's handpicked executives were already preparing for their Monday leadership retreat. Their laughter behind the glass walls rang hollow. I could almost see Kevin boasting about how he finally got rid of me. I entered my office, closed the door and locked it. Then I pulled out my personal phone and sent a short, decisive text. "It's happening. End of day today." The response came within seconds. "Perfect. Ready when you are. Dinner tonight?" I exhaled slowly, the tension in my shoulders loosening. Tonight I would meet someone who had been patiently waiting for this moment. Someone who valued what Amanda, Kevin and the rest had underestimated. I glanced at the calendar on my desk. It was Friday. I would walk out of Dalton & Brooks today. But on Monday? Monday would be fun. And they had no idea. I arrived at La Maison, an understated yet elegant restaurant on the other side of town. Far enough from the corporate district to avoid any curiosities. The dim lighting, polished wood and soft jazz spilling from the speakers made it the perfect place for a discreet conversation. "Over here," a familiar voice called softly from a corner booth. I smiled as I approached and slid into the seat opposite Jonathan Pierce, the CEO of Silvercrest Capital, Dalton & Brooks's fiercest competitor and a man I had quietly maintained a professional relationship with for years. He rose slightly as I sat, ever the gentleman, before settling back down and signaling the waiter. "They finally did it, huh?" Jonathan said as he poured me a glass of wine. "They did," I replied, "exactly as we expected." His eyes glinted with satisfaction. Kevin's arrogance always was his weakness. And Amanda, well, I suspected she'd make this move the minute she stepped into Victor's shoes. Victor had been the previous CEO and, for all his flaws, had always recognized my contributions. His sudden retirement 6 months ago had marked the beginning of Amanda's rapid ascent and the slow calculated marginalization of the senior staff. I had survived for a while, but I could see the writing on the wall. I didn't want to believe they'd go through with it, I admitted, swirling the wine in my glass. But when I found that email chain, I knew there was no saving it. Jonathan leaned forward, lowering his voice. I've already had our legal team review everything. You're in the clear, Kathy. The improvements you've made to the client portfolio system over the last year? Those late nights you spent working from home? We have irrefutable proof that you developed those enhancements on your personal time with your own equipment. I felt the knot in my stomach loosen. They underestimated me, I said quietly. They always have. Jonathan chuckled. They see age and assume complacency. They have no idea that you've been quietly building something better than anything Amanda's leadership team could ever conceive. I retrieved a slim folder from my handbag and slid it across the table. Inside were copies of the updated algorithms, efficiency reports, and the preliminary patent application. All under my name. Over the past year, I had been refining Dalton & Brooks' most important client management software. But I had done it off the clock. At home, on weekends. Every improvement, every innovation was documented, time-stamped, and undeniably mine. Jonathan's eyes scanned the documents and he let out a slow, appreciative whistle. You've outdone yourself. With this, Silvercrest could outperform them within a quarter. I nodded. That's only part of it. I also have the loyalty of my entire team. They've seen how Amanda and Kevin have treated me, and they won't stick around long once I'm gone. They've already hinted they'd follow me anywhere. Jonathan leaned back, visibly impressed. You're offering me not just a system, but the people who know it inside out. I shrugged modestly. They're good people. They deserve better than what Dalton & Brooks has become. The waiter returned with our meals, but neither of us touched the food immediately. There was too much at stake to focus on anything but the conversation. When can you start? Jonathan asked, cutting to the chase. I'll take the weekend to regroup. I replied, feeling the weight of 15 years lift slightly from my shoulders. But I'm ready, and so is my team. Jonathan grinned. Perfect. Monday we'll announce your appointment as Silvercrest's new Director of Strategic Innovation. We'll position it carefully, but the message will be clear. I could already imagine the look on Amanda's face when she saw the news. There's one more thing, I said, leaning forward. I've already drafted a series of transition documents. I'm going to leave them behind. Every procedure, every password, every project outline. It'll look like I'm leaving out of courtesy. But without me and without my team, they'll realize just how much I kept together. Jonathan's eyebrows rose. Poetic. Strategic, I corrected. I don't want revenge. I want recognition. And I want my people to be protected. As we clinked glasses to seal the plan, I felt a surge of calm confidence. The wheels were already in motion. Amanda, Kevin, and the others thought Friday marked the end of my story. They had no idea it was only the beginning. The office felt different when I walked in on Monday morning, though nothing had physically changed. The familiar hum of printers, the soft tapping of keyboards, and the low murmur of conversations all carried on as usual. Yet beneath it all, I could sense the quiet undercurrent of gossip. News of my departure had already circulated. I passed a few coworkers in the hallway who offered sympathetic smiles or quick glances before returning to their screens. Emma, the young analyst from Friday's meeting, hovered near the break room, looking as though she wanted to say something but couldn't summon the courage. I gave her a gentle nod before making my way to my office, where the box I'd started packing on Friday sat on my desk. Framed family photos, awards, and little trinkets from conferences over the years all stared back at me, reminders of how much time I had invested here. But what struck me most was the silence. None of the executives came by. Kevin didn't even have the decency to check in. For all their bravado on Friday, they couldn't even be bothered to see me off. I spent the morning meticulously organizing every project I had touched, not because they deserved it, but because I knew what I was doing. Every file, every process, every password was documented down to the smallest detail. A gift, wrapped with a bow, that would still leave them hopelessly lost without the context only I and my team fully understood. By noon, the awkwardness around the office had reached a peak. My team, every single one of them, stopped by my office one by one, pretending to bring me files or ask procedural questions. But I knew better. They wanted to say goodbye. And more importantly, they wanted to know if there was more to the story. Miguel, my most trusted developer, closed the door softly behind him. Is it true? You're just leaving? After everything? I smiled gently. Not exactly. He raised a brow, clearly hoping for more. Check your personal email tonight, I said, standing to shake his hand. Trust me. He hesitated, then nodded. We'll miss you. All of us. They'll try to keep things afloat but without you. He trailed off, shaking his head. It won't be the same. That's their problem now, I replied with a wink. Later that afternoon Richard from HR arrived, clipboard in hand. He conducted my exit interview like a man desperate to be anywhere else. He rattled off policy after policy, sliding a non-disclosure agreement toward me like it was just another sheet of paper. You understand that all work created during your employment remains the property of Dalton and Brooks? He recited flatly. I signed, emphasizing every word. Of course. Anything I created during my employment with Company Resources belongs to Dalton and Brooks. I said it slowly, letting the qualifiers hang in the air. Richard didn't catch it, too busy checking boxes. And you affirm you have no copies of proprietary information? He asked. I've taken nothing that belongs to the company, I said, truthfully. With that, the formalities were over. I packed the last of my things, sealing the box with tape. As I stood in the doorway one final time, I looked around my office, lingering on the empty chair where so many teammates had once sought advice, comfort, or guidance. Leaving so soon, Kevin's voice came from behind me. I turned to find him leaning against the doorframe with a forced casualness. His tie was loose and he radiated smugness. Well, he continued, don't let the door hit you on the way out. You had a good run, Kathy. But this place needs fresh blood. No hard feelings. He gave a little shrug as if dismissing a waitress. I smiled politely, keeping my expression unreadable. No hard feelings at all. You'll probably enjoy retirement, Kevin added. Maybe take up gardening or something. I kept my eyes on him. Oh, I'm not retiring, I said softly. I've already lined something up. Starts Monday. Kevin blinked, caught off guard. Oh, a leadership position, I added, stepping past him into the hallway. Something I'm quite excited about. He chuckled awkwardly, but I didn't stay to listen. I walked straight out of the building, box in hand, leaving behind 15 years of memories, late nights, and, most importantly, the people who had underestimated me. I wasn't just walking away from Dalton and Brooks. I was walking towards something far more rewarding. And Monday? Oh, Monday was going to be very interesting. I woke up earlier than usual on Monday. There was no rush, no commute to the office where I'd spent the better part of my adult life. Instead, I stood in front of my bedroom window, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise cast a soft glow over the city. I had always been the kind of person who believed in hard work and loyalty, but this morning I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. By 8 a.m., the news had gone live. I refreshed the Silvercrest Capital website, and there it was, bold and impossible to ignore. Silvercrest Capital announces Kathy Bennett as Director of Strategic Innovation exclusive rights secured for revolutionary client portfolio system. It wasn't just a new job title. It was a public claim of ownership over the very system Dalton and Brooks depended on. The press release explained how I had developed the updated system independently, away from company time and resources. It outlined Silvercrest's plans to roll out the technology, leapfrogging competitors. I knew Amanda, Kevin, and Richard were reading the same release right now. In fact, I was sure of it because moments later, my phone buzzed. 9:12 a.m. Emma. Kathy, what is going on? There's chaos here. I smiled to myself. 9:17 a.m.? Miguel. They just called an emergency executive meeting. Amanda looks like she's seen a ghost. I replied simply, check your personal email before setting my phone aside. Over the weekend I had sent private offers to my entire team. Every developer, analyst, and coordinator who had stood by me undervalued and ignored for years. Silvercrest had prepared senior roles with higher pay, better benefits, and, most importantly, real recognition. By 10 a.m., the news had spread like wildfire through the financial sector. Industry blogs were already dubbing it the Bennett coup. LinkedIn was buzzing with posts about the sudden shift. Dalton and Brooks clients were starting to panic, and so was Dalton and Brooks. At 10:30 a.m., a number I knew well flashed across my phone. Amanda, I answered, keeping my voice calm. Hello, Amanda. Kathy? Amanda said, her voice tight but controlled. I think there's been a misunderstanding. We need to discuss the intellectual property you took with you. I couldn't help but chuckle softly. Amanda, I took nothing that belongs to Dalton and Brooks. What I developed on my own time with my own resources is mine. You'll find it spelled out very clearly in the employment agreement. Section 14, if I recall. There was a pause. Let's be reasonable. She tried again. We're willing to negotiate. Can you come in this afternoon to talk? Oh, Amanda, I said sweetly. I'm booked solid this week, but I'm sure our legal teams will have plenty to discuss. I ended the call before she could respond. 10:45 a.m. Miguel. It's pandemonium. Kevin screaming at IT to pull every server. Amanda's locked in her office. Half the team's asking me if they should start job hunting. I sent him a short reply. They won't have to look far. Before noon, I had already received acceptance confirmations from nearly everyone on my old team. Even Emma, who had seemed hesitant before, wrote back saying, "If you'll have me, I'd be honored." Silvercrest's legal team was already fielding licensing inquiries from Dalton and Brooks's biggest clients. They could either pay handsomely to license the system or try to rebuild from scratch, which I knew would take years and millions of dollars they couldn't afford to lose. By lunchtime, Dalton and Brooks's stock had fallen 6%. Investors don't like uncertainty, and this was the very definition of it. Meanwhile, Silvercrest shares were trending upward as rumors of upcoming client migrations began to circulate. My phone vibrated again. It was Kevin, of all people. "Kathy," he said, trying and failing to sound composed. "Listen, we need to sit down. We might have been hasty the other day. Maybe we can find a role for you again." I almost laughed. "Kevin, I'm flattered, truly. But I think you're about to be very busy. You can't do this," he hissed. "You're burning bridges." "No," I said softly. "I'm just walking across one you didn't even see me building." I ended the call and leaned back in my chair. The emails from my old team kept pouring in, every one of them eager to jump ship. Kevin, Amanda and Richard thought Friday was the end of the story. But it wasn't the end. It was the start of a very long week for Dalton and Brooks. And the best was yet to come. By Tuesday morning, the cracks in Dalton and Brooks were no longer hidden. They were gaping fractures visible to anyone who cared to look. Industry blogs were dissecting every detail of the situation. Analysts on morning financial shows speculated about the company's future. And clients were whispering in private calls about shifting their accounts to Silvercrest. I sat in Silvercrest's conference room, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, surrounded by my new colleagues. But more importantly, my old team. Miguel, Emma and the others looked more energized than I had seen them in years. "You really pulled it off," Miguel said, shaking his head as we prepared for the first project planning session. "I still can't believe it." "Believe it," I replied. "And let's make sure it was worth it." Jonathan entered the room giving me a nod. "The fallout is worse than even we expected," he said. "3 of Dalton and Brooks's largest clients have already reached out to negotiate terms with us. They're jumping ship." I nodded unsurprised. The clients had relied heavily on the system I built. The fear of losing the stability and functionality it provided was enough to push them towards Silvercrest. Even if it meant breaking existing contracts. By mid-morning, my phone lit up with a message from an old friend still inside Dalton and Brooks. "David, emergency board meeting called." Kevin's pacing like a caged animal. "Amanda hasn't said a word since Monday. Richard looks like he's aged 10 years overnight." I forwarded it to Jonathan, who chuckled. "I almost feel sorry for them." "Almost," I replied. Later that day, Denise, one of Dalton and Brooks's senior clients, scheduled an impromptu lunch meeting with me. Denise and I had worked together for over a decade, and I suspected this wasn't just a friendly catch-up. Over coffee and salads at a quiet restaurant, she got straight to the point. "We've relied on you more than you know," she said. "Amanda's team has no clue how to manage the portfolio system without you. And frankly, we don't trust them anymore." I gave her the reassurance she was looking for. "We'd love to continue working with you, through Silvercrest." Denise leaned back, visibly relieved. "I'll push it through on our end." When I returned to the Silvercrest office, Jonathan was waiting with a fresh stack of reports. "More clients lining up," he said. "Dalton and Brooks is hemorrhaging." I stared at the list of client names. Many were relationships I had personally nurtured over the years. It wasn't just about taking business from Dalton and Brooks. It was about protecting the people I had built those relationships with. Keeping their businesses stable when Amanda and Kevin's incompetence had left them vulnerable. Around 3 p.m., I received another text from David. "David, rumor is Kevin's blaming Amanda. Amanda's blaming Richard. Board is furious. Word is, they're discussing leadership changes." I responded only with, "Expected." By Wednesday morning, Dalton and Brooks's stock had dropped 15%, causing panic among shareholders. Several employees from the company began reaching out to me privately, asking if Silvercrest was hiring beyond just my team. People were desperate to get off the sinking ship. But the real moment came at 11 a.m., when Dalton and Brooks's general counsel, flanked by 2 of the company's senior executives, called Silvercrest's legal team requesting a formal meeting. "They're ready to talk," Jonathan informed me. "They know they're cornered. They'll want licensing," I said calmly. "But they'll also want it cheap and quiet." "Oh, I'm sure." Jonathan grinned. "But that's not what they're going to get." Our legal team was ready with carefully prepared terms, an expensive, non-negotiable licensing fee, backdated to cover past use, and a public acknowledgement of my sole authorship of the system. I knew it would sting Amanda and Kevin's pride more than the financial hit. having to admit publicly that the woman they labeled deadweight had built the very foundation of their success. That evening, as I wrapped up my day, Miguel popped into my office. "You see the news?" He handed me his phone. And there it was. Breaking, Dalton and Brooks board announces sudden executive shakeup, CEO Amanda Price and head of product Kevin Rhodes step down, effective. Immediately I took a long breath, letting the reality of it settle over me. After 15 years of loyalty, being discarded like nothing, I had reclaimed not just my dignity, but my value. "How does it feel?" Miguel asked. "Like justice," I replied softly. As the headlines rolled in and congratulatory emails from Silvercrest executives filled my inbox, I couldn't help but reflect on Kevin's words from Friday. Deadweight? Hardly. And this wasn't over yet. 2 weeks later, I stood in the main conference room at Silvercrest, looking out over the city skyline as the final signatures were inked. The licensing deal was official. Dalton and Brooks had accepted the terms, though not without a fight. They had agreed to pay the full licensing fees, retroactive and ongoing. And, more importantly, to publicly acknowledge me as the sole creator of the client portfolio system that had driven their success for nearly a decade. Jonathan entered the room with a wide grin. "It's done. Congratulations, Kathy. They've just published the acknowledgement across all their platforms. No way for them to hide it now." I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the past 15 years begin to lift. The statement was brief but powerful. Dalton and Brooks formally recognizes Kathy Bennett as the sole inventor of the portfolio management system developed during her tenure and is grateful for her contributions to the industry. Grateful. The irony didn't escape me. Only weeks ago, I had been shown the door like a burden. Now, they were publicly singing my praises. More importantly, Silvercrest was thriving. The clients who had followed me and my team had integrated smoothly. Our new version of the system, enhanced by the refinements I had held back after sensing Dalton and Brooks's betrayal, was outperforming every projection. Miguel and Emma knocked on the open door. "You might want to see this," Miguel said, holding up his tablet. The headline nearly made me laugh. Dalton and Brooks faces investor revolt, following executive mismanagement board under pressure to explain patent oversight and talent exodus. "The vultures are circling," Emma remarked. "They'll survive," I said, folding my arms, but not without learning a hard lesson. As we walked into the meeting with the rest of the innovation team, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought me here. I thought about Amanda's dismissiveness, Kevin's smugness, the board's silent complicity. They had seen me as outdated, irrelevant, someone who had overstayed her welcome. But the truth was, they simply didn't understand the value of experience, loyalty, or genuine innovation. After the meeting, I received an unexpected call. It was Denise from Dalton and Brooks's legal team, the same woman who had tried to slide that severance package across the table. "Kathy," she began, her tone subdued. "On behalf of the remaining leadership, I just wanted to personally apologize for how things unfolded. Many of us were against the way you were treated." I could hear the regret in her voice, but I knew it wasn't just about decency. It was about survival. "I appreciate you reaching out," I replied evenly, "but I've moved on. And so has my team." Denise hesitated. "If there's ever a chance to collaborate again in the future." I didn't let her finish. "I think Dalton and Brooks has some internal rebuilding to do first." We ended the call politely, but the message was clear. They had burned a bridge they desperately wished they hadn't. Later that evening, as I walked through the Silvercrest offices, I noticed how different it all felt. Here, people listened when I spoke. My ideas weren't met with dismissive glances or patronizing smiles. My age wasn't seen as a liability, but as proof of experience. My team thrived, their energy palpable, unburdened by the toxic environment we had left behind. As I passed by the development wing, I caught sight of Emma leading a small group, confidently explaining a complex system. Miguel stood by her, nodding in approval. Seeing them shine like this meant more to me than any title ever could. Jonathan found me later by the windows. "You've changed things, you know," he said. "Maybe," I replied, "but it shouldn't have taken this much for people to recognize the value we bring." He nodded. "It's not just this company. People in the industry are talking about it. About you." I glanced out at the city. "Let them. Maybe next time someone will think twice before pushing aside the so-called deadweight." As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the skyline, I finally allowed myself to feel it. Not revenge, but satisfaction. Not just for myself, but for every overlooked worker who had ever been told they were too old, too quiet, too set in their ways. I didn't just prove Amanda and Kevin wrong. I reminded an entire industry that loyalty, expertise and integrity aren't liabilities. They're power.